We're going to work into our contemporary drama unit. We're going to be talking about two different plays, Poof by Lynn Nottage and The Blizzard by David Ives. So I want to start by talking about Poof by Lynn Nottage. Both plays, though, before we move into this specific one, are one act plays. So they take place in one location. The scene, the setting never changes. It's the same people, basically. Um, and we can learn a lot in one act play, a lot of things that we don't necessarily get when we have multiple acts or multiple scenes. Um, so I wanted to get into some background of Lynn Nottage, not too much. We'll be moving forward and talking more about it. But a point of connection between Lynn Nottage and David Ives, they both earned an MFA in playwriting from the Yale School of Drama. Nottage graduated about 5 years later, and Ives graduated in 1984, Nottage in 1989. Both of them have complicated characters, deep social truths. Um, Although they have different styles, there are a lot of similarities in themes. And at first glance, they wouldn't necessarily be considered really similar. So we'll talk about that. And then I have an infographic to hand out to you to look at, and it'll ask you a series of questions to make those connections between the two plays. So Poof is about men controlling women in abusive relationships in the modern era. So what happens in the plot is the protagonist, Lorene, the main character, she yells at her husband Samuel at the beginning of the play. He suddenly disappears into ash. So when Lorene calls her husband Florence, who is also her upstairs neighbor, Florence is in disbelief. She doesn't really believe Lorene. It's not something that we would encounter or experience in real life, although this genre could be considered a murder mystery because we don't know what happens. But the point of this play isn't necessarily to figure out how Lorene maybe killed her husband, maybe she didn't. We are supposed to suspend our disbelief and just believe her that he just disappeared, because the larger issue is this abusive relationship that's going on. And it's not just a mental, emotional violence, it's also physical, because Lorene and Florence do talk about, being hit by their partners, their husbands. When Florence leaves, Lorene does decide to sweep the rug and eat dinner, and we can see the sense of freedom that she feels from being away from him. I want to go over a couple of statistics. According to the Bureau of Justice Statistics from 1994 to 2010, about 4 in 5 victims of intimate partner violence were female. In 2007, females made up about 70% of victims killed by an intimate partner. And then, according to the National Coalition of Domestic Violence, on average, nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused by a partner in the United States. So, this play deals with a really serious topic, but it does so in a humorous way. It's dark comedy. The style of comedy makes light of a darker, more serious subject about social issues, about violence and abuse. Some would say it's also a magical realism, a genre of literature that mostly focuses on realistic portrayals of life, except that it does blend elements of magic into the story, and we're supposed to um, believe that and accept that version of life. Some major themes here, of course, we talked about domestic violence. We have this idea of freedom. Lorene is feeling so free after her husband disappears. Ideas of escapist fantasies and desires. The importance of friendships in relationships. Failure of the justice system. Traditional gender roles, even in 1990 when the play was first performed in 93, the idea of autonomy and self-reliance, lots of other things. I'm going to transition now to the Blizzard. We're going to do that on a separate video, since I'm using the trial version, free version of Screencastify. So bear with me as I transition to the next video, please.